Howdy gang, we're making a real video today. Nobody asked for it, but I felt like giving it another shot, so we're doing that. Now, I've mentioned a few times on stream or Twitch channel, we've been making a video game in our off time, and it's a Metroidvania. And as I'm making it, I'm thinking I'm not really including much of that Vania in it. It's really more of a Metroid-like, as are most of the games in the genre, actually. This one thought kind of sent me on a big, stupid rant, and I ended up writing a script for this, essentially. I'm gonna try and hash this mess out. I've actually gone over this argument very half-assed on stream, but now there's thought put into it. The first Metroid, what is it? Well, really friggin' hard is what it is. For real though, kinda like combination Mario, Space Invaders, and Zelda. I know that just sounds ridiculous. In Miyamoto terms, Mario was a jump game, so Space Invaders was a shoot game, and that makes Mega Man a jump shoot game, and Castlevania is of course the jump slash game. And this is silly already, so let's go back to real world terms. This is an action platformer, guys. Looking at you, Borderlands. Looter shooter, looter slasher. The elbow's a looter clicker, isn't it? I'm pretty sure there's loot games. I digress. So Zelda was an action adventure. What's that key word there, adventure? A story, I guess? I don't think visual novels necessarily count as adventure games. When I hear adventure game, I think of the classic point and clicks. Monkey Island, Sam & Max, Grim Fandango, the works. These games usually see you exploring a space where you are locked out of the story from some obtuse puzzle usually, and you'll need to click around, find some items, and combine these items with stuff in the world to solve puzzles. Which will allow you to progress. There's some level of gated progression in all these games. And, well, that sounds pretty much exactly like what you're doing in Zelda, doesn't it? And you're not clicking anymore, it's top down or side on, top down. What the hell is that? What the hell is that perspective? Anyways, you're opening chests to find those items, and then you use them on stuff in the world, solves puzzles, lets you progress. Does that make Zelda a Metroidvania? An action-adventure game? Not quite. The key element of what makes this subgenre its own thing is the world structure. In Zelda, we have a hub world, an overworld, if you will, and it leads off into all of these linear levels, which we refer to as dungeons. Back in the first Zelda game, they're literally called levels. But, you know, they're all dead ends. You go through a dungeon, and then you have to walk out of it, or if you're nice, they'll give you a portal to teleport you back to the front. Go in there, get your items, solve some puzzles, and you will use it to get to the next dungeon, probably, and maybe just get a couple extra power-ups in that overworld, only to go back into another linear dungeon. It's always a back-and-forth motion. But in Metroid, we have what we call the hub and spoke design. I did say the hub world with Zelda, didn't I? Well, rather than a spiked ball with something jutting out all like that, or even more of a wagon wheel where all those spikes are connecting to another space, which will lead back to the center. Meaning that you can essentially walk in a straight path and end up back where you were without doing any backtracking. Now that's huge. That makes this world feel real. It's lived in, it's realized. No longer are you going back to a hub world, diving into dungeons. You're just going from place to place. This feels very organic. Linear is always used as a detrimental term towards video games because it feels artificial. We don't even build our houses linearly. There's always a shortcut somewhere. Your house will have a loop in it somewhere. So many of the immersive sims have loops in their levels as well, which allows for the non-linear emergent gameplay that the genre is famous for. So, now, even in your game terminology, you aren't thinking in terms of like, I need to go back to the hub world, or I don't need to dive into this dungeon. It's just a world. You're thinking, there are 3 ways to get to where I need to go from here. Which one do I feel like exploring? Backtracking is a pretty big element of this genre because of the world design. You're always heading back through these areas, and it's always interesting because you always have new stuff to explore them with. And that would be very poopy feeling if these were linear levels. Right, so this is Hollow Knight. Probably the best Metroidvania ever made. Don't fight me. Them just the rules, alright? We got yourselves an indie darling, and that makes it the best thing in the world. And it's a fact. Anyways, so you start the game right here, go through this linear tutorial zone, then you come to the town, and they loosely let the leash off you right here in the Forgotten Crossroads, which appears to be a hub. It juts out. There's so many different areas. We've got the town, 1, Crystal Peaks, 2, the Resting Grounds, 3, City of Tears, 4, Fungal Waste, 6, no, this one's Fungal Waste. This is the jellyfish place, isn't it? I don't remember what that place is called. We're on like 7 now. And what is this, 8? 8, the green path? I think that's 8 areas, guys. That's a lot. If we look off into another area, let's look at green path. We follow here, you see this is also a hub, connects to, what, like 4 different areas? Anyways, if we come up, we go to the Howling Cliffs, which will lead us back to the starting zone, back to the town, back to where we started. We go into the Crystal Peaks, bit less roundabout path, but we go up and it can take us back out to the town, back to where we started. Yeah, there are loops all over this world, and there is a fast travel system, but you know, I never really felt the need to use it because there's so many ways to get to where I need to go. I never felt bored exploring this place. Right, so that's the world structure out of the way. I want to talk a little bit more about what we'd call the other core element, the gated progression, and why that's very important to making this stuff work. I feel like a game that's very nearly a Metroidvania, but they chose to leave more open-ended. Mega Man X. We have a bunch of linear levels. There's upgrades in them, hidden power-ups. You beat the boss, you get a new weapon. None of this stuff is required, though. There's people who go through this, speedrun it, buster only. You don't need any of that stuff, which means people can, you know, cheese their way through your game, beat it in a couple of hours. And they don't really even need to take time to take in your levels at all, because they don't need to remember anything. There's a linear path to the end, and there's nothing stopping them from getting there but their own skill. But, you know, what if we change that around? See, one of the very cool things about the game is, since you can do the levels in any order, once you've taken out a level, some other levels might have been affected by you beating a previous level. For example, the ice world, that's the most common starting place. When you finish that one, the lava world will freeze over. Now, there was nothing stopping you from going into this lava world before, but it's easier now. But let's say these levels were connected, and you know, you took damage constantly when you walk into this lava zone. Now you have to go to the ice world if you want to progress and go through this lava zone. This is very much the same functionality the Varia suit has in Metroid. So, yeah. Mega Man X, good game, but progression isn't gated, and there's no reason to really explore besides, you know, making your life a little easier. It's not really an adventure anymore, it's just a romp. It's a shmup, a beat-em-up, but with shooting. Right, so I think that we've gotten our genre defined now. We have interconnected levels that connect to each other non-linearly, and we have gated progression, which encourages exploration. So, that basically describes every game in this genre. So, what about the thing that put the Vania in the Metroidvania? Castlevania Symphony of the Night. It gets the credit for making this genre popular. That's a big part of why we're calling this the Metroidvania now. Kinda like how we had the Souls-like for the longest time because of Demon and then the two Dark Souls games. But then Bloodborne came out and it was way more popular for whatever reason. And now we call it the Soulsborne. It kinda just told that other genre to get the frick out of here. Because there's a new cooler kid in town. Anyways, Symphony of the Night itself, it kind of has the world design down. While the other Castlevania games had their levels implied to be connected, this time they actually are. But they still feel very much like the traditional levels. You go through them, there is a linear path through it, there's a boss at the end, and then you move on. It's not quite a pure Metroid clone. It has some light action RPG elements. So we're gonna swap out the Zelda influence that made this genre for Zelda 2 influence, I guess, or more likely Castlevania 2 influence. So really it's just a natural progression of what Castlevania was. Which made the game a lot more approachable. Right? Nobody talks about Symphony of the Night being hard because, you know, you can grind, you can find better equipment, you can prepare by, grabbing items, like potions and stuff, and you're storing them in your godsend of an inventory. You don't have to leave your wall chicken on the floor anymore, you don't need to toss out your throwing axes, because throwing knives will be better against this boss. You get to keep them all. That's awesome. Now, there is some game progressing, but it's a lot less strict. You get a double jump, for example, but, you know, there's a lot less things that are straight up abilities. The progression gating is less in your face. Most of the things that you need are, keys, really. Like, straight up keys. They serve no gameplay functionality. Otherwise, the only thing keeping you out of areas is just like artificial barriers, like enemies being a higher level than you. In which case, it's your own skill holding you back. There is, however, the Holy Glasses, which bar you from getting into the second half of the game. That's a weird one, because this is a piece of headgear equipment. I'm sure you can sell it, and it's optional. You have to go through side quests to get this thing. And it keeps you from reaching the whole path of the game. you'd think something like that would be more mandatory, but because it doesn't adhere so strictly to this gated progression mechanic, it's pretty easy to miss. I imagine most people get the bad ending before they're like, you know, that didn't feel right. I'm gonna go read a guide and see if there's more to this game. A very similar thing is actually done in Hollow Knight, where you have to go to a side quest to get a special charm, and then another special charm, which will allow you to fight an actual final boss. And Bloodstain had a more direct copy of what happened in Symphony of Night, which, you know, Koji Igarashi made it, so he's in his right to do so. Or you had to get another optional item very similar to the head, to the glasses. There's a suit of armor that makes you immune to spikes, and you have to find that and like, wow, I can use this as a tool. It's not just some random equipment. And you go to this hallway, which is covered in spikes, and you can go into this completely optional area, get yourself a special sword, which will allow you to attack a moon or something during the final boss, which will reveal the true final boss and open up a whole nother act of the game. And if you remember that where that moon is you killed in the boss fight, you have to look for that somewhere else in the world, because you've seen it before only once, and hopefully you remember it. Which you should, because you've been backtracking this whole time. Anyways, a bit weird in that these items aren't like a part of you. They're stuff that can be gotten rid of. They're stuff that can be missed. It's definitely a lot less strict. Now, I said that it's not a pure Metroid clone because of that RPG aspect and how less strict the progression gating is. Mr. Igarashi named this the Igavania. So, you know, somebody I didn't even ask to steal the Metroid-like genre. The fans just did it, and they refused to call it an Igavania. But most of what we call Metroidvanias follow the Metroid formula to a T. There are very few Igavanias that actually exist. Off the top of my head, I can think of Salt and Sanctuary, Scoutful Usurper, love that whole franchise, go check him out. Yeah, the man needs sales. And of course any of the Castlevanias that Igarashi made, including Bloodstained. And then, arguably, Hollow Knight and Ori 2. Both of which aren't really traditional RPGs, but they definitely have that whole optional upgrades, missable thing going on for it. Loose and gated progression. I think that these two, Hollow Knight and Ori and the Will of the Wisps, might actually be true Metroidvanias, a combination of the Metroid-like and the Igavania. There's a thought. So, I guess you could say that the genre only really found its true identity recently. I thought it'd be fun to do a little bonus section at the end here where I look at a couple games that are a bit harder to put into which genre they actually are. Are they just action-adventure games, or are they Metroidvanias? Dust and Elysian Tale, a game I played through on my channel. It drops you in a few big open-ended levels, and some of them are actually connected, but for the most part they're levels, and you travel to them through the world map. So it's already out. These levels even unlock in a linear sense, like you can't just go anywhere. You need to do a quest first or whatever to get to a next area. Otherwise it's structured like an Igavania. Say in traditional platformers, each area would have like a gimmick. We think of Celeste. You get the first area, it's like a tutorial zone. There's the things that they fling you with the momentum, and then you go to the next area with the mirrors, and there's the black blocks that you can dash through and spit you out on the other end. There's the area with the clouds, the area with the bubbles. Right, they all have their own gimmick that are essentially like having another power, but it's only for that area. In Dust, the abilities in the game act essentially like those gimmicks, except you get to take them with you. So, when you get an ability, it's just to solve a problem that was recently introduced in whatever level you're currently playing. However, since you get to keep this ability, it allows the complexity of the future levels, which are unlocked linearly, to increase, which lets the game create its own difficulty curve aside from just making the enemies harder. That's pretty good in its own right, but, you know, I don't think this is a Metroidvania. See, the Souls-like, I tried to play a modded version of this on my channel, and it did not go well. I kind of broke the progression and got stuck in like an endgame area very early. So, my bad. Anyways, I think I mentioned that I think Dark Souls was a Metroidvania at the time. Yeah, I've changed my mind since. The first time I played it, I thought that it felt very much like a Zelda game. And that's not just because my mouse wasn't working, so I had to play only with my keyboard, which is how I played Ocarina of Time on Project 64. Anyways, the Souls-like, or Dark Souls, I guess we're gonna focus on Dark Souls specifically. These are structured exactly like Igavanias, but they're in 3D. There are like 2 3D Castlevania games that are actually pretty good. Not talking about Lord of the Shadow. Anyways, that just means 3D wasn't enough to ship this, just as the ship to 3D didn't make Metroid Prime not a Metroid clone. Metroid-like, whatever. When we look at this world, really, like, it gets praised for how everything connects back to the Firelink Shrine, but that's only the early areas, really. There are actually plenty of spikes on this ball. It's like a wagon wheel with spikes coming out of it, so a bit of a combination of the two world designs. It's a weird one, but because there's so many dungeon spaces, I'm gonna have to say it doesn't fit the bill. If we go to any of the areas immediately connecting to Firelink Shrine, connect to other areas which lead back to it, and then they jut off. So we go to the catacombs, that leads down to the Tomb of the Giants, and that's the end. Once you go through Sen's Fortress, brings you to Anor Londo, you can go to the Duke's Archives, which goes to a linear path through the Crystal Place. And there's Anor Londo itself, which has a boss fight, linear path, dead end. After you've gotten to Blighttown, you can go into the Demon Ruins and Lost Izalith. Again, a linear path. There's a lot of linear paths in that second half of the game, which is interesting to think about because a lot of people, when they replay it, they only go up to Anor Londo and play ONS. They say that the second half of the game is not as good. That's probably because the world design falls off. It loses that Metroidvania feel that you've been experiencing. It becomes linear dungeons again. Much like the Igavania, you're only gated by things that don't really have much gameplay functionality, meaning that you don't need to explore or do any backtracking. Even if this world was interconnecting, there's no real reason to do it. Especially after you've unlocked fast travel. But you're never going to get anything that's going to make you rethink how you're looking at this world. The defining feature of the thing that makes it not even an Igavania is, of course, the bonfires, which act as a sort of soft save point. Your usable items like arrows and potions, throwing knives, those don't replenish. I guess your main potion replenishes, but stuff like Cure Poison, whatever. These prevent you from rage quitting and reloading from a hard save point. And also, when you die, you leave behind something. usually a form of currency or experience points. We refer to this as the corpse run, which isn't actually an original idea. I personally first saw it in Diablo 2. Maybe it was in Diablo 1 as well. I don't know. But I really hate to think that maybe Jekyll and Hyde on the NES came up with it. The God of Wars have always had the whole Zelda adventuring loop, but it was level-based, so that's an easy one to put away. However, the recent God of War 4, it had a very big overworld. However, it went off into linear dungeons. They're not really connected. This overworld, rather than just having small puzzles to solve to get bonus things, as you would see in a traditional Zelda game, there's actually many dungeons scattered about. Like, the shrines in Zelda Breath of the Wild are bite-sized dungeons. This has things that have more substance to them than the shrines, and make the world look more interesting, which is a really great move. If they should do something like that for Breath of the Wild 2, or whatever they're gonna call it. Darksiders 2 actually fits that same mold. Another game I played on the channel. Hey, I'm repping myself. The early Resident Evil games all share the design of Metroidvanias. There's no fast traveling, you're in the mansion, it's built like a real house, there are plenty of looping paths. Kinda like the Igavanias, you're only gated by keys, really. You're not getting anything that's redefining the way you play the game, or give you a reason to go back to old areas. You're just like, oh, I can't solve this puzzle right now, I need to go find the key. It's locked. And once you find that key, you go back, do the puzzle, keep going. It has loosely gated progression, but again, nothing that encourages exploration, really. You just go to every room until you find what you need. To complete a mission of character abilities, such as a double jump or a roll, or anything of the nature, leaves you with only puzzles and resource management. Even the guns aren't direct upgrades because you need to make sure you have ammo for it, and the more powerful guns have limited ammo. Again, very heavy resource management, which helps put the survival in survival horror, its own unique genre. Now, another game that had like the full potential to be an Igavania is Terraria, of course. It procedurally generates an Igavania for you, essentially. However, the completely open nature of the game ruins it. Like, yes, technically the whole world is interconnected, but there's no structure to it. Your progression isn't necessarily gated. There are a few places that you can't enter until you have a specific item, or you'll at least die without that specific item. Sometimes you have to kill a boss or whatever, but, yeah, there's really not much gating you. However, if you strip away the ability to reshape this world as you would in the standard mode and download an adventure map, which is a really cool thing people do, they essentially build an entire Metroidvania for you. They hide secrets and items and stuff, and they structure their world in a way that requires you to use specific items to get around. So, what I'm saying is, Terraria is simultaneously not an Igavania, and also the ultimate Igavania, because it's an Igavania maker. And that's freaking epic, gamers. Alright, I think that's all I can think of for our bonus section here. Oh, what do you guys think? Did I label anything wrong in our bonus section? Did I miss anything in what my perception of what this is? Are you still going to call the genre Metroidvania because you're afraid of change? Or are we gonna give Metroid the credit it deserves because it's really not a well-known franchise for whatever reason? Probably because they don't make the games very often. Symphony Knight doesn't even want to be called a Metroidvania, it wants to be called an Igavania, so, like, you know, let's let everyone be happy. Metroid clones? Metroid-likes? That's the future. That's the real word. And I guess that's what the game I'm making is gonna be. Unless I make some changes. No, that'll be the death of me. Alright. Take care, everyone. Hey! You actually made it to the end of the video. Guess that means I did something right, yeah? Well, I'm sad to say this is actually the first, serious video I've ever done, so you won't find too much more content like this on my channel. Primarily a stream archive. So, if you want to see more of my beautiful face, feel free to head over to my Twitch channel, or the VODs are there for you to watch too. Yeah, I like to talk about game design, and I also talk about whatever games I've been playing. So, you know, even if you don't want to watch the whole thing, you might find an impressions review type thing tucked away in a handful of videos. Currently in the process of time stamping them up to make them more available for you guys. If you want more quality Metroidvania content, I will have to point you towards the Ingenious Clown. I'll put a link in the description. Anyways, see ya.